Hello, Steve Arts 89. Well, I'm continuing on my Stephen King marathon. I would have joked that it was like the never ending Stephen King marathon, but I'm actually getting towards the end and I was sort of running out of movies and sort of looking at well, what ones I'm going to watch last. And then I was like, well, there must be some I've missed. So I had a look and I actually found a couple, and I found a couple on YouTube. One was Big Driver. I loved it. Now, it was originally done for Lifetime Channel. It was released October 18th, 2014, then released on DVD the next year. It's a very simple story, but it's really good. It's one of those movies where I don't have to write notes and try and remember what happens. It's no big complicated story. You remember every scene because you're watching every scene to see what happens next. It was that good. Basically, there's a woman who is a writer and she is getting ready to go to a speaking engagement somewhere. And she's talking to a friend on the phone who's next door is helping her get ready. And then she drives off, and I thought something was going to happen on the way there, but she gets to the actual event, she talks, and it all goes well, and she meets the lady who runs a library who organised her to come, and they're all very nice, and blah, blah. And she gives her, and she complains about the drive, how long it took to get there, and how bad the highway was. And she's like, oh yes, the worst. Take this shortcut home. And I thought, oh no, there's the film. That's where the film's going to come from. So yeah, she takes this little drive, and she ends up on some little road out in the country, and there's a bunch of wood with gigantic nails on the ground on the road. She runs over a whole bunch, and not just one or two, just like a whole bunch of them. Like it's almost like a building fell apart on the road. And of course, she blows out a tire. She's trying to fix it, and people drive past, and they don't stop. Of course, one guy stops. And at first you think, oh no, but he seems really nice. I'm like, no, this story wouldn't be that simple. That she gets stuck and then she gets attacked by some big man because he was really big. When he got out of the truck, he was like really giant. That's why it's called Big Driver, because he's known in the town as Big Driver. And at first he's really nice and he starts fixing the wheel, and then she actually it gets a bit odd for a second. Then she actually sees in the back of his truck a piece of wood with a nail, and she's like, oh no, he's the one who set the trap, basically. So of course she asks if he's done, and he stands up, and then then he sexually assaults her quite violently for the evening, because she crashed the piece of wood were right outside an old rundown gas station, and he rapes her in there. And it's fairly brutal, it's fairly visual, and then he drags her off into a drain and leaves her body there, thinking she's dead. She's submerged underwater for a bit before she wakes up. She finds other bodies in the drain. She eventually gets out. She eventually walks to civilization. She skips any trucks or cars. She doesn't try to get a lift or anything. She walks there, and she hides whenever she sees a car because she doesn't want to see him again. She ends up at a convenience store where she calls herself to leave a message for herself, and then she doesn't call the police or anything because she doesn't want them to know. She's a famous novelist. She doesn't want that to be her story and now to be everything, whatever comes up whenever she's mentioned. So she doesn't tell anyone about it. She sees a pub. I forgot what it's called. It's run by Joan Jett, which I didn't recognise her right away. I saw her in the titles, but I still didn't recognise her when she was actually playing the part. But yeah, she ends up, because he took a car, and she ends up hiring a driver to take her home. She takes care of herself. She pretends when she sees a friend a couple of days later she fell downstairs, so forth and so on, and she's decided not to tell anyone about this. She's going to go get STD check, pregnancy test, all this stuff, and take care of herself because she doesn't want anyone knowing about it because she's a famous author and she doesn't want this to be her story. But she starts writing about it, and she starts thinking about it, and she starts researching, and she works out that the lady who organised the speaking engagement was the mother of the rapist. So she decides to get some revenge. So she goes to the mother's house. The mother acts, well, first she's shocked that she's alive, and then she acts surprised. She eventually gets the gun from the author, whose name I really should have remembered, Tess. And they struggle, and then she ends up stabbing the mother, and eventually killing her. I'm okay with that. She was not a nice person. Once she's exposed that she tells the truth, that she actually set it up, she wanted it to happen, she's glad that he raped her. She's just a horrible person. And that's how she ended up with a son like that. And she sees a photo of two boys. She thought one might be the father, but they're both brothers. Now she goes out and waits for this guy. Truck pulls in, she comes out, bam, shoots him. And it's the brother. At first she freaks out, she thinks she's killed an innocent man. She imagines speaking to him, and he says that he always borrows my stuff, blah, 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 so she feels bad about it. It should also be mentioned that she hears voices generally. She has, I guess, spirits of a bunch of old ladies who give her ideas for stories, and that's what her sort of hit novel series is about a bunch of old ladies who solve crimes. And one of them is played by Olympia Dukakis. It must be one of her last roles. She's amazing. She's like helping her, giving her advice and that. But she does speak to people throughout the film. She's speaking to her maps, whatever the system in the cars is called that tells you where to go. I don't drive. I can't remember what it's called. I've never driven in my life. I don't have a car, and I've never driven in my life. So she's talking to that, and it speaks back to her in unusual ways, which is the first time you realise that something's off, because it says, "I don't like it here." I'm like, why would the Google Maps say, "I don't like it here"? Okay, something's going to happen there, and then you end up realising that she's speaking to it, and it's speaking back to her differently than it just, functions. Okay, so she's killed the mother, she's killed the brother, and then she lies in wait for the big driver. She finds him, and she basically just shoots him. And mostly because he starts to walk towards her and she shoots him. She shoots him a couple of times. Then there's a problem where the bullet sticks, so it doesn't fire. And he starts to chase her, but she hits him in the head with one of these big pieces of wood with the nails in it. And it literally sticks in his head, and the board is sticking off his head. He has to pull it out, and he's obviously not well because he's just had a spike put through his head. So it's easy game for her to load up the gun again and finish him off. And she does that by shooting him in where. And I'm okay with that. I was totally with this character. What she went through was horrific. What he did was horrible. The fact that other people... Because you find out, actually, when she's in his garage, he's printing out photos of the rape. And he's got just pictures everywhere of women that he's raped. And him and his brother are there taking selfies with rape victims and dead bodies. So obviously she didn't kill an innocent man. So good riddance for all three of them. Then Olympia's sitting in the car going, "You've forgotten something, or you don't always remember everything. What is it?" And she doesn't know. She goes around. She doesn't know what she's forgotten, and she just is like, "Look, this is the best I can do. I'm going home. If they find me, so be it. I will go down for this. I'm proud of this, Joan Jett, I forgot to mention, she is the one who calls her because her car showed up in the parking lot of her pub, which I wish I remembered what it was called. It had a sort of funny name. She's talking, and the lady's like, she can tell something's happened to her, and she's like, "Look, I was abused by my stepfather. And she pulls out a glass eye. She says, he had a knife to my eye, he was threatening me, and he slipped. He didn't actually mean to do it, but he still took my eye out." And she's like, "Look, I understand." And she goes back. She's a very strange character, the way she, just has this confession, and she doesn't like to be touched, and she plays it really well. So well, I didn't recognise it was Joan Jett. I love Joan Jett. And she I wish she was in more things. But, she goes home and she starts writing the next story, and I think the story for the group, the ladies, has changed a little. But I'm just glad that she survives this horrible experience. She avenges the people who really, didn't deserve to continue to do things like that. and then she finds inspiration from it and continues to write and be an artist. I love the story. I love the character. She was a little dry. She wasn't hugely entertaining as a person, but for the most part, she went through a bunch of horrible scenarios. So even if she had been a lighter person to start off with, you wouldn't have seen any of that in the film anyway. So yeah, I just really enjoyed it. I was there the whole ride. I was sitting there watching the whole film, just waiting to see what happened next, because it's that sort of film where you just want to see what happens next, and you're totally with the character. What I was going to say, I love it. I want to remember the name of the club that she went to, the pub, the Stagger Inn, as in you stagger in. That's it. I knew it was like a clever name, but it's already over 10 minutes. I need to stop talking. It was great. Glad I just found this film randomly. Love it.